Hey everyone, today is July 10th, 2025, and you are listening to Busy for the Lord podcast. Today I want to cover a topic entitled cloud seeding, geoengineering, and chemtrails. But specifically, I want to tackle the subject of cloud seeding. Now, before you shut this podcast off and just label it a conspiracy theory category that you're not interested in, just hear me out because I think this has huge implications, not only prophetically, but biblically, and in regards to what the future holds for life here on this planet. So, Sean Ryan is a big YouTuber. Just recently did a huge 2.5 hour interview with a gentleman that is the founder of Rainmaker, and his name is Augustus Doricko. And so he basically gives his background, how he started the company, and then he also says that he is a Christian, which really kind of threw me for a loop because I thought, who would start a company that modifies the weather, but also claims to be doing God's work? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to play a multiple clips so that you can kind of get an idea of what the topic at hand is, what he's talking about, his background, and then we're going to discuss what should be our response as Christians regarding this cloud seeding and weather modification. Now, there's a big debate out there as to whether this weather manipulation was involved to produce this horrific rainfall that caused the Texas flooding. I will just start out with a disclaimer and say that we cannot prove for sure that this was the cause, but we cannot disprove it either. And I think when you hear the evidence, you'll be able to come to a conclusion on your own as to whether or not this technology and this innovation, if you will, actually caused this horrific tragedy in Texas and possibly North Carolina and other places like New Mexico, etc. Okay, in this very first clip from the Sean Ryan show, Augustus, the founder of Rainmaker, is giving you the distinctions between cloud seeding, geoengineering, and chemtrails.
Cloud seeding was a technology invented in the United States by American scientists in 1946. It is super localized in its effect, both in space and time, meaning you can make it rain or snow more over an individual city, over 100 square miles at a time. Precipitation happens, 15 minutes to a couple hours after your intervention. And if you stop operating, right, if you stop cloud seeding, then you stop affecting the weather. It stops changing, right? So you can turn it off whenever you want. Also, because we were doing all of these experiments over the course of the last 80 years, we have data on its safety, right? We have data on the materials that we use. So people have typically used material called silver iodide to freeze the liquid in the cloud into these big snowflakes that eventually precipitate, melt into rain, or stay as snow. Silver iodide, its toxicity is like 10 times less than aspirin, for one. But more than that, more importantly than that, after decades of operations in Utah and Idaho and Colorado and California, because there were all these old programs, like I mentioned, they only added 8 parts per trillion more soil or more silver to the soil. And there's already 2 parts per million silver in American soil as it stands. So they added 1 million times less than what's naturally there. There's no adverse ecological consequences, agricultural consequences to human health. Like, it's way below the threshold where you'd start to see anything like that. So cloud seeding is just a way to make more water. It's super local in its effect. It's pretty well characterized, and we know that it doesn't have any adverse ecological consequences. On the other hand, there is geoengineering, particularly solar radiation modification. Totally unlike cloud seeding. In order for cloud seeding to work, you need a big fluffy cloud that's already there. Solar radiation modification, you just put it up at like 60,000 feet. And then there's chemtrails or contrails, right? So that's the streaky things in the sky that people see behind airplanes. The first and most important thing to say is, if you see those long streaks in the sky, that's not cloud seeding. Whether it's contrails or chemtrails or anything else, it is not cloud seeding. For cloud seeding to work, you have to have a big fluffy cloud with natural water. Those long streaky things, they can't make rain. They don't turn into big puffier clouds that eventually make rain. That doesn't have to do with weather modification. There are such a thing as contrails, right? So the turbulence from planes and the vapor from the jet engines will freeze behind the plane, and that'll turn into condensation. What people have suggested to be chemtrails are like the nefarious addition of either some sort of neurotoxin or goodness knows what.
All right, so let's just respond to the differences between cloud seeding, geoengineering, and chemtrails from Augustus. I would have to completely disagree with him. I definitely feel that there are nefarious means to chemtrails because there has been so many pollutants added to the chemtrails that have been demonstrated through science and taking soil samples as far as different heavy metals released into the sky. In fact, when you go out in the morning and you see these chemtrails, you can almost smell a difference. And I know that my nose does not lie. It goes beyond allergies. You can feel it. You can feel the effects of it when you go outside and you see the chemtrails. And I'll even say something to my wife like, it looks like they're spraying chemtrails again. And there's a ton of evidence all over to suggest that, yes, there is nefarious means regarding chemtrails. Now, cloud seeding, he says that it doesn't have any adverse ecological effects. Well, if there is this amount of flooding with all this rainfall, then of course it has great ecological effects. Again, as I said from the beginning, we can't prove it, but we can't disprove it either. So again, that's something that I wanted to share with you. This next clip, he's sharing the objections to what he's doing, and this is from Fox News here.
I want you to please address a larger question, which is one that is somewhat broad and perhaps even religious, but are you playing God? Are you messing with things that you shouldn't be messing with when it comes to the weather?
I get this question all the time, and I totally think it makes sense to ask it. My intention is to serve God. I think that in Genesis 1:26 through 28, and then throughout the Psalms and the rest of the Bible, God tells us to take dominion over and steward creation, both for our sake, creation's itself, and then to honor him. And so if there are droughts and we have the tools to mitigate the damage done by them for our sake and for nature itself, then we should deploy those for the sake of tending to and stewarding the world. And if we weren't to do that, if we were to ban cloud seeding wholesale, despite knowing that it's safe, despite knowing it could help alleviate these problems, we'd be abdicating our God-given responsibility to be stewards of the world.
Okay, so you heard from Augustus that he believes that he's actually doing God's work by modifying the weather. Now, I don't find that anywhere in the Bible. In fact, I find the opposite. In James 5:17, it says Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed earnestly that it would not rain. And it did not rain on the land for 3 years and 6 months. Again, this is suggesting that if we want to affect the weather, that we need to petition God who controls the weather, and that is through prayer. That is not through some scientific manipulation. We also find in the book of James chapter 5, verse 7, it says, "Therefore be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives the early and latter rains." So again, this is something that we submit to God. This is something that God has in control through his providence and his sovereignty. This is not being a good steward over the earth and somehow using technology to intervene and manipulate the weather so that we can prevent droughts. In fact, the exact opposite is happening. We're causing more destruction. I want to quick refer you to an article that I found from a news site, and the article is from August 9th, 2022, and it's entitled, "Injecting Microscopic Particles into Clouds Over South Texas to Increase Rainfall." So this was happening even 3 years ago in the same area as San Antonio. Across South Texas this year has proved to be a struggle for farmers and ranchers that rely on rainfall in order to meet their bottom line. Their crops and cattle need rain. Every day we go without rain is a struggle financially. Each day that does not see rain from the skies is a day that requires irrigation on McFriggery's ranch. With the rising cost of everything, this can cost him up to $47 per acre, a significant increase from previous years. One nonprofit is trying to help create more rainfall from the clouds that are already present. South Texas Weather Modification Association, based out of Pleasanton, consists of several water districts committed to enhancing rainfall across South Texas. Bria Hiat is the meteorologist for the nonprofit that takes to the skies to cloud seed in order to help out farmers and ranchers like Moffridge. Quote, "We have 2 pilots out west in Uvalde County, and then we have 2 pilots out in Karnes County. No state funds are available for cloud seeding operations in Texas. Rainfall enhancement projects are being funded exclusively by underground water conservation districts, local political subdivisions, and aquifer authorities." So this is very similar to what Augustus was saying. Cloud seeding is a process that releases microscopic particles of silver iodide and calcium chloride from lightweight aircraft into thunderstorms to increase rainfall efficiency. They stress that they do not make rain, but help storms produce more rainfall. Quote, "It enhances it, forming more ice crystals and growing taller and thus precipitating more." And we also found in our research that the thunderstorms last longer, says the meteorologists. Their research has yielded results that about 500,000 more acre feet of water is produced in addition to annual rainfall amounts, about 5 to 15% addition. So, again, this is just more evidence from an article 3 years ago that they are doing cloud seeding in the area that was affected by the recent Texas floods. But what really gets me is that he is claiming to do God's work, and we're seeing this more and more. These technocrats, these scientists, these physicists are all claiming to be Christians and using Christianity as a cover for their social work. Like, hey, I'm just trying to make the world a better place, when in reality, they're making the world a worse place. Here's a quick clip from the Sean Ryan show of Augustus telling Sean how he came to Christ.
And the reason why I wanted to study physics was, I grew up an atheist, and there's this Heisenberg quote, not the guy from Breaking Bad, but the physicist, that says, when you take your first drink from the cup that is the natural sciences, you find atheism, but down at the bottom of the glass, there's God staring back at you. And so I wanted to study physics because I wanted to see whether God was real or not. And turns out the physics part didn't help so much with figuring that question out. It was mostly the Bible, actually. But that's why I went and studied physics there.
You made your determination.
Yeah. So I got baptized April 10th, 2021.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Glory to God. Jesus saved my life.
All right, so you hear that he came to Christ through the Bible, which is always a good thing, if in fact he did come to Christ. He was an atheist, and so that's good news. However, he's using his platform, his expertise in the field, to do something that I don't think God approves of. Scripture has a lot to say about weather and how God is sovereign over weather, and it never says anything about man getting involved in weather. Luke 12, verse 54, "And he also was saying to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, immediately you say, a shower is coming, and so it turns out." Psalm 148, verse 8, "Fire and hail, snow and clouds, stormy wind, fulfilling his word." Leviticus 26, verse 4, "Then I will give you your rains in their season, and the land shall yield its increase, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit." Nahum 1, verse 3, "The Lord is slow to anger and great in power, and the Lord will by no means clear the guilty. His way is in the whirlwind and storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet." Jonah 1, verse 4, "But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship threatened to break up." Isaiah 29, verse 6, you will be visited by the Lord of hosts with the thunder and with earthquake and with great noise, with whirlwind and tempest and the flame of a devouring fire. And then lastly, Genesis 8:22, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So God is the one who is in control of the weather. As far as being stewards, we have no control over the weather, nor should we even try to. My personal opinion, brothers and sisters, is that I do believe that cloud seeding had something to do with the floods in Texas and North Carolina. Just the amount of rainfall that we see happening so fast that people couldn't even react, and the fact that there has been demonstrable proof that they've been doing this in South Texas, it just seems to me that this is the case. There's another clip that I wanted to share with you, and this comes from a TikToker as far as diving a little deeper into cloud seeding.
You guys go to Google and punch in NOAA Texas weather seeding. When that page comes up, scroll down to NOAA Library, click on that, and then scroll to the very bottom, and you can punch in any date you want for any location, any state where they're weather seeding. And if you punch in Central Texas, it'll show you that they've been weather seeding in that area, that they just had the massive floods at Camp Mystic. They've been doing it since March, and it goes all the way through November something. So they're going to be weather seeding that area, 10,000 square mile area, 10 different counties until like mid-November. So is somebody going to be held accountable for this? And are they going to continue to weather seed after we just had a massive catastrophe? I mean, 20 inches of rain is what I heard fell. But the river rose 26 feet, and there are like over 100 people passed away and gone, and they're still looking for kids under 1 year old. Who's going to be held accountable for this? Go to NOAA, the NOAA page, NOAA Weather Seeding Texas, and scroll to the NOAA Library, and you can punch in any town you want, and you can find out if they're weather seeding where you're at.
All right, so there's that information for you brothers and sisters to look into. I wanted to leave you today with this verse in Amos 4, verse 7. I also withheld the rain from you when there were yet 3 months to the harvest. I would send rain on one city and send no rain on another city. One field would have rain, and the field on which it did not rain would wither. So again, we see the sovereignty of God in our natural weather patterns. Now, that would lead some to ask the question, so was God to blame for the weather if it wasn't cloud seeding or weather manipulation caused by man in the Texas flooding? Should we blame this on God? No, God is sovereign over the weather, and he can certainly intervene anytime he wants because he's the creator of the universe. However, we are still under the fall. When Adam and Eve sinned, they also brought creation under its bondage with them. And so all of creation is under the curse. And we as Christians have to remember that the world will continue to get worse, weather will continue to get worse until the time that Jesus Christ comes back and restores the earth in that 1,000-year millennial kingdom. Until that time, like the Bible says in Matthew 24, earthquakes and seas roaring and all of that, Jesus predicted that these things would get worse and worse up until the time of his second coming. But wrapping it up and getting back to this idea of cloud seeding, I don't think this is something that Christians should claim that they should be doing as far as being good stewards of God. I don't think it's something that even unbelievers should be doing in order to try to quote unquote help droughts or rainfall. I think what we're called to do as believers is to pray and petition the Lord for rain. And we've seen how God miraculously answers our prayers and can intervene when times get tough. But again, this is an ethical, moral question that we have to be debating and asking. And I think people just can pretty much rationalize anything that they want regarding their business ventures or their scientific ventures. I would ask that you pray for this young man who is the founder of Rainmaker, that God just opens up his eyes and helps him to see that he is not doing God's work, that he very well may be causing more destruction. And again, we can't prove it 100%, but we can't disprove it either. But again, we all have the information, and we all have a mind to use, and we have to put these puzzle pieces together and start asking these questions. So with that said, God bless and Maranatha.